Jackie Talk time, folks. State Representative Jackie Chan of Quincy joining us once again for our weekly podcast. Hi, Jackie.
Hey, Joe. It's good to see you again this week. Looks like things have warmed up since our below zero weekend.
Yes, you survived the deep freeze, did you?
It was. I actually was out for a short period on Friday, and I did go to the chili cook-off in House Neck on Saturday. I wore this down coat I rarely ever wear. It's a very beat up old coat, but it was that bad. I yanked out this ancient coat out to try to stay warm. But hopefully everyone was safe and sound. And I want to give appreciation to the Quincy firefighters on the battle on Liberty Street they had, and basically creating their own snow mound as they try to put out that fire.
Yeah, that was a brutal one for sure. And that was just the start of an extremely busy weekend. They responded to all kinds of broken pipes and alarms because of the cold, and they were really straight out all weekend.
Yeah, firefighters are first responders in a different level. I don't think everyone appreciates. They're not just fighting fires as we saw on Liberty Street, but also very often first on the scene of a medical emergency, first on the scene when there's a gas leak or other chemical leaks. First on the scene, as you correctly point out, I know we always make this joke about cats stuck in the tree and bring the firefighter, which I think is more truth than fiction. But there's also the whole, you're right, any type of a structural issue of a home, firefighters are first on the scene. And as we like to say to folks, they're firefighters. I'm reminded constantly to firefighters, but also I'm also reminded a lot that to people that run into danger, not away from danger. And, this is the kind of the lost part about first responder firefighters is that they're actually running into a dangerous situation with full knowledge of what's going on, and they have to make snap decisions, and their education and training is crucial to make the best judgment possible because sadly, or better, I don't know how you want to frame it, good or bad, but, fires of high severity is becoming a very rare thing. So the training, supplements on the job experience, which may not be, a weekly event, right? Obviously, we don't want fires on a weekly event. Modern construction and, fire safety is very good right now. But they're running into sometimes a first time situation because every fire is unique.
Yeah, that's a great point, actually. There are thankfully fewer fires, but the ones that do occur, I was talking to the National Fire Protection Association about this because of all the synthetic materials that are used in furnishings and construction now. If there is a fire, it's much more intense and much more deadly.
Yeah, the Firefighter Association, is pushing for legislation to get rid of certain types of combustible materials that are toxic. It makes a lot of sense. You find them in couches, you find them in mattresses, this type of material that combustion is basically just a chemical hazard as soon as it catches fire. And that obviously puts the residents at risk, but also puts the firefighters at risk too. And, all kinds of stuff you may not realize in your home that isn't like wood or cloth that you would never think about that's combustible, can go up quick. But also, the fumes alone may get you before the smoke will.
That's right. Yeah, absolutely. Back to the chili cook-off for a minute. What a great day to have a nice hot bowl of chili. How did it go? Was there a good turnout?
Yeah, I went in a bit early. I got there, about the 1:30 zone and stayed about 45 or so minutes. And it was a full room. It was a great crowd. It was, a lot of faces I haven't seen before COVID. People came in, and you're right, it's a hot bowl of chili for everyone. And, also seeing the Boy Scouts out in Troop 6 was great. I'm always happy to see them out doing the volunteer work and also participating in the contest. The church bake sale was there, and obviously supporting the House and Congregational Church as part of this fundraiser. They didn't have their historical winter fair, which is the early December, late November event they have to help fundraise. And as you all know, and I've said this multiple times, on this podcast, they have a local organization that you support. You support. It's if you make direct donations to those charitable organizations, it means a lot more than you could to give an international organization. And I'm happy to be able to make a donation, help out. But I always encourage folks that if you have something you're passionate about or you receive service from at home, you got a couple of dollars to spare, please do. It's great because a lot of these fundraising events didn't really exist for almost 3 years.
Yeah, it's true. Of course, the other big event of the weekend was the Lunar New Year celebration. How did it go?
It was pre-pandemic levels. I wasn't sure how I was going to go out. I talked to the organizers; they weren't sure I was going to turn out. They changed the configuration ever so slightly here and there to change the flow of people moving in and out of the place. So every year, the Lunar Festival has always a slight change here and there to try to tweak and improve the way it's run. But shout out to Philip Chung and the staff at Quincy Resources and the volunteers and the sponsors and all the people who bought a booth and the food vendors as well to support the organization. And it's a family event. It's basically sums up as a family event, and people walk in from the neighborhood or they drive in. And parking was a bit of a challenge this year because we didn't have access to North Quincy T parking lot. So it was sorry to say, I think people had a little more cars on the residential areas than they normally used to. But I mean, the event brings in like 5,000 to 10,000 people. It's a come and go event. You're not there for the entire event. You're there for an hour or so, meet up friends, enjoy some of the shows, and then you move on to your next part of the day.
Yeah, want to remind folks, be watching QA TV in the near future. We had a camera person there, so we'll have some clips from the event here on QA TV in the near future.
Yeah. I did see a cameraman pointing straight at us when we're doing the whole ceremony opening. The next event for Quincy Resources will be the awards banquet, which they did last year as the first banquet they did in post whatever pandemic state we're in. And, that's going to be coming up probably in May or early June, depending on the timing of the banquet. But, we'll see how it goes. And of course, August Moon Festival is in August. So, organizations try to run 3 huge events within a 6-month time period.
Yeah. Speaking of the pandemic, you're aware, of course, the federal government's poised to end the COVID emergency later this year. So how does that impact us here in Massachusetts?
Well, not really too much. I mean, the COVID emergency gave the president basically wartime equivalent power, same as the state emergency gave Governor Baker in every state. And the states have moved away from state emergencies for quite some time now, actually well into almost a year, in some cases, depending where you are. The president will not be able to access certain types of wartime powers. It does not mean that COVID's gone away. It doesn't mean there's still not a health situation. It doesn't mean that COVID is still not, I believe, the second biggest killer still in the United States after heart disease. So, I don't believe COVID will remain the second largest killer. I do think that therapeutics and vaccines will bring that down to much more reasonable or unreasonable, because a death is bad, number down the road. But, in the near term, it's still a major killer among diseases and other natural causes. But I mean, it basically allows the president to grab some confidence and move to a new phase of pandemic. Again, it takes away some of the president's powers, that was basically wartime type powers. And try to bring some more confidence to the American people that we are moving to a new phase in our lives. And notice it's May. He picked a time period post-winter, particularly up here where we live, where the virus infections in general are much more virulent and contagious and more often. Once we get to the May, we're going to be outdoors more. The weather's better. Our immune systems tend to be a little bit better when there's bright sun and warm weather.
Yes, we can open the windows.
Exactly. And COVID is still continuing. There's no sign that COVID's any less contagious. I mean, it's still very contagious. And it does like the warm weather, sadly. I mean, it's scary that this particular virus doesn't mind the sun as much as some of the other ones. That being said, I think at this stage, as I said more than once, if you don't know what you're doing now, I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah, I guess one of the big changes is the vaccines will no longer be free. Do you think the state will have to kick in?
Well, the federal government is still mandating the insurance company has to pay for your vaccine. So you have insurance coverage. The insurance company has to pick it up. The state, this is the country has kind of like a universal healthcare in a peculiar manner, modeled after a private public kind of thing that we do in Massachusetts here. And we should be okay for most residents regarding be able to get vaccine if so desire. It's states that have people who have no desire to get health care where the burden is going to be highest. Not surprising a lot of states well into the Sun Belt going southbound don't have mandatory healthcare insurance requirements. They have for-profit hospitals. People tend to forget most of the country is actually for-profit hospitals, not-for-profit hospitals. And they don't have high hospital density. Medical centers and smaller health centers, make up a lot of the more rural areas. So, in this area, particularly the east side of the state, I think we don't fully grasp the healthcare situation in the rest of the country. And frankly, we don't even grasp the healthcare situation west of 495. I mean, the Berkshires is a whole special place regarding the challenges of healthcare access and even vaccine access, right? So, it's a tale of two worlds. But those of us who are living in this side of the state, doesn't really fully see the challenges other states have, and states that do not encourage healthcare or require employees to pay healthcare. I mean, families are going to be looking to pay $110 plus per shot, and that's a lot of money to start with. But also some of these states are lower per capita than we are. The cost of living might be lower too, but the per capita is also lower. So it all goes together, despite this in this inflationary period, bangs them up harder than those who have more wealth.
Yeah, we definitely are in a bit of a bubble here in Eastern Massachusetts in a lot of different ways, for sure. Yeah, that's just one of them.
Yeah, we'll see vaccine disparity come up once another wave hits. I don't know when it is. Like I said, this thing likes warm weather. But I mean, you're going to see that by seeing the hospitalization rates and the death rates they can identify as COVID ones. The one that's going to be tougher is the tests. Test kits can be treated as over the counter. Insurance, I don't think it'll be required to cover it under federal law. Whether the state is going to require that, I'm not sure. I don't think we do. I don't recall that we do. So that's probably going to be a type of conversation as we do other healthcare reform laws this year. Right now the feds are still giving you at least one more set of free test kits. So, very much would definitely visit, or you just Google it, the federal government's website to get at least some tests again. And the tests do expire. Keep it out of expiration dates, because more than one person has told me they've tried to use a test that expired and the results weren't coming up at all. They were just blank, no lines.
Which I guess is a good thing. Instead of giving you a false reading, it gives you no reading just to tip you off that it's no good.
It's no good, yeah. So also please check those COVID test expiration dates. It does really matter. That's another factor I think families going to have to deal with is those COVID kits. I think they're going, because I've been fortunate to get the free COVID kits because I did go online and get them, but I think they're going anywhere from like $20 plus. At the pharmacy.
At the drugstore, yeah. So we are recording this, Tacky, the day after the State of the Union speech. I know you didn't get a chance to watch the whole thing, but of what you did hear about it, what do you think?
Well, it's like a lot of these state-of-state addresses. I mean, the president lays out what they've done and try to take a victory lap, to lay out what they like to see, and just like every president before that. Before Biden, to try to spot the other party by hitting some touchstones to try to differentiate themselves from the other party, or try to basically try to maneuver the other party in a position that they really can't get out of. And one of the key ones, it's a very popular Democratic position this past election cycle, deals with Medicare and Social Security and the fear of privatization of both, as well as paring back services. That's a big Democratic platform, which the Republicans have a very difficult time trying to manage, because some members of their party, not all, but a small segment wants to pare back benefits. But also privatization of particularly Social Security is not a new thing. That's been around for decades, to basically take away guaranteed benefit in exchange for more of a, you can figure out how to manage your own money situation, which, to be perfectly honest, the vast majority of us can't afford a financial planner.
Yeah, no, it's very true. And it's, to be, basically had the decision taken away from you and have it set aside for you is a huge benefit for most people.
Oh, absolutely. And, also the idea that you're going to hire private hedge fund managers to run Social Security, and there's no consequences, if they blow up your money. Social Security trust fund is very, very conservative on how it manages money, much like the state pension system. I mean, the single biggest debt holder of the U.S. debt is the U.S. government, of which the Social Security Trust Fund is one of the biggest agencies holding U.S. debt. Same as the Postal Service, independent, they have an independent pension fund too, and the huge holders of U.S. debt because it's safe. The growth rate isn't wonderful because low interest was too long. But now if interest rates rising, it is the best interest of pension funds to just gobble up T-bonds like crazy because the interest rates are good and the money's guaranteed. It's low risk. But the bigger challenge of things like Social Security and other pension programs is the fact that we have declining birth rate and we have not been able to supplement our workforce, and it's still going on. And after COVID, it's even worse. Supplement our workforce of new workers to pay into the Social Security system. And the solution is only one solution. It's called immigration.
Mhm.
The federal government figures out what they want to do immigration. We're going to have a labor workforce shortage. And that has a negative impact on programs like Medicare and pension program, any pension program and Social Security. So, they got to figure that out down there soon. The longer this goes, time's are ticking on ensuring that the solvency. So and don't
Yes,
forget,
the closer I get to that age, the more I worry about it.
yeah, people forget. I mean, the federal government, as well as the state government, had raided pension funds in the past, which creates the unfunded liability. So, I mean, as opposed to raising taxes or cutting spending, generally raising taxes because cutting spending is actually more challenging. People get credit for. But I mean, they borrowed money against the pension funds, Social Security, and they were slow in paying it back. So not all these liabilities, are strictly a declining birth rate or people using the program. It's also because the feds, as well as the state has, borrowed against the fund and create these unfunded liabilities. It's not as simple as paying out benefits, that creates the liabilities.
Yeah, which leads to another of the touchstone topics, raising the federal debt ceiling, which also came up last night during the speech.
Yeah, that was expected. I mean, this has been a touch point of politics forever. If you watch Congress over the last decades of this debt ceiling issue, it's always been political fodder for both political parties. When President Trump was there, the Republicans had no problems raising the debt ceiling. Democrats into play, they try to get demands. Yeah, he did. Yeah, three. You're right. Three. There was three that under Trump. So, I mean, it's one of those things that's always political fodder for both political parties. Doesn't matter which party take on the president. And we're one of the few countries that actually has a debt ceiling tied to the U.S. Congress. Most countries don't have a debt ceiling that requires legislative approval. It's actually an executive branch function to manage debt. So this is a little unusual in this country regarding debt ceiling management. And it's interesting because it's the same chant all the time. We want you to cut spending. I mean, the debt ceiling's got a debt ceiling. You want to cut debt. Just saying. I mean, you want to cut debt, cutting spending. I know it's just some level of common sense here, people. You want to cut the level of debt. And, and it's always the challenge with spending. It's the same conversation I have people at home here. We should cut spending. All right, where do you want to cut first? And that's
Right.
the hard
It's
part.
hard. Nobody wants, obviously, if you have paying for something, it's something that you want, so it's hard.
Well, in this state, for example, our biggest single cost, and same as the federal government, is Medicare. I mean, Mass Health is our Medicare, Medicaid program. It's called Mass Health here. It's state operated, but predominantly federal funded by your paycheck. Funds a lot of this program, as well as state tax dollars and federal tax dollars. And that represents, 30% plus of the state budget. And as I like to say, you be my guest and tell grandma and granddad that you're taking away their health insurance. You can do that first. I'm not doing that. If you have the capacity to go to a senior citizen, I'm taking your health insurance away. Hey, you do it. And if you feel good about yourself, well, that speaks a lot about your personality and how you grew up. And, this is the interesting thing about my job and other legislators and executive branch folks too, is that everybody wants to cut spending but let's start with the biggest nut. And are you willing to go down their path and stare down someone's grandparents? Or talk to your own grandparents. Cutting can start at home. You go tell your parents you want to take away their Medicare, Medicaid.
Yeah, like I said, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. Certainly when you're dealing, with human beings and their well-being.
Well, exactly, Ed. And people tend to reduce this to just sheer statistics and political sound bites. I mean, it's never lost to me with dealing with human beings. It never has, and never will. And it's not like Congress. Again, once you're further away from home, the money fundraising is different. Your interaction with the public's different. It's harder to get to meet individual people when you're in Congress. And in this whole negative fundraising we have feeds the beast of trying to raise money by being as negative as possible and do a lot of fear mongering. And I don't like that. I don't like the idea that people should be giving money out of fear. People should give you money out of faith and belief that you're going to do the best you can in the job you got.
Mm.
And like I said, it's just my mentality about it. That's just me. Not everybody will agree with me on that, and I get that too.
Of course, one of the other big topics was the so-called Chinese spy balloon incident.
Yeah, just when you thought you saw it all, you get that moment like, really, this is happening.
And then the big revelation to me was it wasn't the first time.
Yeah, that's actually very troubling. It wasn't the first time. So, as you guys all saw in the news, likely, it's a spy balloon that's apparently the size of 3 school buses and a payload or whatever is attached to it, like 2,000 pounds. Chinese government claimed it's some kind of weather device. The U.S. government claims it's a spy device. The problem is that the Chinese government claims a weather device, but won't name the private company that owns said device. Which is kind of like clue that if you can't get the private Chinese corporation that owns it and keep changing the story, we've got a problem here.
Mm-hmm.
People ask me why balloon. It sits in that zone that's above air travel, and it can stay stationary-ish with the right propulsion system to kind of navigate the winds to stay in one spot to take pictures and do surveillance. It is solar powered. With clearly solar panels, so it has the ability to self-generate and also collect better sunlight once you're out of the clouds. And it's relatively harder to spot. I mean, trust me, they know where every spy satellite is in the sky. I mean, whether it be private cameras or public government-owned satellites, all governments know whose satellites are up there, right? Whether it be Elon Musk or the CIA. I mean, everybody knows whose satellites are up there. So that's a little bit different. Also, your satellites can't just like move wherever it wants to. It relies on the rotation of the Earth. So it's a little bit more complicated. A spy balloon gives you the ability to kind of be somewhat stationary-ish in the geographic zone. And we know that cameras can read a newspaper from space if it's calibrated correctly. So when you're only about 60,000 feet in the air, it's a lot better than being in low orbit. You can kind of do that. That we saw the one around floating around Latin America too, which is kind of like, what? Another one? What are they doing here? And the timing is peculiar because, again, I mean, Secretary of State Blinken was going to make his first trip to China and try to engage in more normalization of relations. And I'm not sure what PR stunt this is. It's a weird one.
Yeah, it does bring up the bigger question of the relations between China and the U.S. and China and Russia and the U.S. and Russia. I think it's all kind of tied together.
Oh, exactly. And it's a trade war still going on. The Trump era tariffs against China has not been repealed. And that actually does contribute to your bigger cost at the store. Tariffs are 100% passed through to you as a consumer. I know it's protectionism mechanism. I know it's designed to create revenue generation for government. But at the same time, though, you, the consumer, is paying for it. It's not the supplier, it's the consumer that pays for the tariffs, which is any country trying to create protectionism wants to give the local market a lower price structure than the foreign market trying to enter. Hence, reducing tariffs is a big part of globalization economy because it gives equal or near equal ability for foreign and domestic goods to compete on equal or sort of equal footing. You still have cost of supply chain and all that.
Yeah.
So that's what's going on here. So that era stuff hasn't ended. And before you say get rid of tariffs to reduce inflation, it actually won't reduce it fast enough. There's still all kinds of other factors that contribute to inflation beyond just the tariffs, but I mean, it can be one of the factors of solution. So, as you may be aware, the U.S. government has signed new contracts to have military base operations in the Philippines. We're not building any military base. We're going to be using existing military bases in the Philippines to do joint operations and base U.S. equivalent troops. I wouldn't expect to see 50,000 troops in the Philippines, but we actually have another naval port, which is crucial, as well as a staging area for U.S. troops, and there will be U.S. troops in the Philippines, but don't expect like South Korea level. I think the base that was there during the U.S. Territories, I think it was about 15,000. I'm trying to remember the exact number. I think it was about 15,000 when it was still a U.S. territory. It was really transitioning out to its own country.
Mm-hmm.
So that gives you a military base in Singapore. If you look at a map, the Philippines, Japan, and South Korea. And if you're China, it's like having military bases, in Halifax, in the Bahamas, Bermuda. It's like that same kind of approach, right?
Yeah, pretty close by. Yeah,
pretty close by, and it's all inside the shipping lanes. 40% of all shipped goods move through the South China Sea. So the U.S. military having bases that are or military outposts sitting in their offsets, these so-called Chinese artificial islands.
Mm.
And, fully expect more, which won't make the news, unfortunately, because it really doesn't make U.S. news. Close encounters of the ship's kind, I think is the way to put it, between U.S. naval vessels, as well, not just U.S. naval vessels, but also French, British, Australian naval vessels that are going to be going through the area, the military naval vessels. You don't have to send a whole flotilla. I mean, you send like one ship through, and there might be some more close encounters of Chinese Navy.
Yeah, it's interesting because you don't want to cut off economic ties. I mean, bringing it close to home, we have the Springfield manufacturing facility that making the new MBTA cars owned by a Chinese company.
Yeah, which I'm hoping there's a massive audit by the state to find out what's really going on and how come they can't build or more accurately, assemble a car correctly, which have seen disasters on the Orange Line. I'm hoping that the Healy administration will open a major audit to find out what's going on. But you're absolutely correct. I mean, while a lot of stuff is moving on supply chain and manufactured to other locales, it's not like you can just magically put up a factory. Apple is, for example, the best example where they have Apple City in China, essentially. And Apple wants to get out of China, but you can't just build a new Apple City in Vietnam. It doesn't work that way. The logistics of getting goods and services, we have long-term contracts. Supply chain routes, they're very useful. It's you have to transport goods to a port. Train is still the preferred way of doing that. You have to build big rail. It's the fastest way to get stuff to port rather than just trucking it. It's not as easy for U.S. manufacturers to just lift stakes and get out overnight.
Right, it's almost a tale of two worlds going on. There's the government side of it, and there's the private sector part of it as well.
Yeah, China is very different from Russia. We're talking about the second largest major economy. We're talking the single biggest economy of consumer goods. We're talking about an economy that's still considered an emerging market for some reason I don't understand. But it's also a continually growing middle class, despite the fact it has a shrinking population. It's still a growing middle class. I know that sounds oxymoronic, but there's still a lot of people that are lifting out of poverty level. That whatever the definition of poverty is in China, they're moving out of that into a middle class area. It's still very much moving to city areas. The rural areas are still very challenged, just like any other country. The very tight supply chain here. I mean, I like to say you got Kentucky Fried Chicken, which is the single most popular foreign restaurant in China. They love their Starbucks. Starbucks has a huge footprint in that country, dealing with the government, also local supply chains. And if a Starbucks pulled out, there's a huge economic ramification for them from supply chain of the beans straight to those employees at the stores. So, there's also this talk about what it's called domestic retail nationalism. I don't know if we've done this here in the U.S. too. It's just you never think about it, where you don't buy foreign goods because of nationalistic mentality. And it's not made in America. This is different. This is like, we're going to shun your country strictly because of politics and nationalism, not because of the desire to create a local economic benefit.
Okay.
To me, it's a very different matter. Because foreign investment goes both ways. It's not just investment in foreign countries, but foreign investment in the U.S. also does happen.
Mhm.
And it's not just it's moving money back and forth between oceans. So there's a little legit fear out there about whether or not China down the road will go towards nationalism retail,
Hmm.
bring up greater tariffs against foreign goods, and also encourage local people to shun foreign brand
Mhm.
products that the Chinese government deems as a threat to the national security, and force U.S. companies out, or U.S. companies or European countries or other foreign countries' exposure to China will try to make them capitulate to the national Chinese national government or Chinese communist government demands. And it's not like using soft power where you intertwine your economies and use money to make investments, and you try to create favorable conditions for foreign investment and foreign development in terms of jobs and corporations and bank services or whatever you're trying to do to try to make it more difficult to oppose the local government.
Yeah. Yeah.
This,
Yeah. The whole balloon incident was just bizarre to me. It's like, I mean, I'm sure they have satellites already, spying on us. Why would they send a balloon?
it's relatively low tech when you think about it,
Yeah.
right? Keep it in the satellite. And they say you can kind of keep it in one spot for a bit.
Mm.
But the fact it was descending means these things aren't built well. I mean, something happened. And the fact they spotted one in Latin America means that they say, well, and you're right. I mean, if it's true that the Defense Department under Trump knew about these things and didn't take any action on it, that's not a good sign for national security. And I know there's also criticism, why didn't you shoot it down right away? I mean, it's a 2,000-pound object, over inland area. And, it isn't, I mean, yeah, I know there's a lot of space, but, what's your risk level? And then you also want to try to preserve the payload. It's
Right.
different hitting water than it is hitting land. And the U.S. military and intelligence they want to know what is in that 2,000 pounds of metal or whatever substance it is, that the balloon was carrying. They want
Right.
to see what's inside of it. So if you crash this thing, on land, it's a different crash than it is in the water.
Yeah, there was talk at first of trying to, grab it with a big net and drag it down, or just to keep it preserved. So the whole thing is very strange to me, because I'm sure all the information that it gathered has already been transmitted to its destination.
Perhaps. I mean, if it's a malfunction, maybe it did, maybe it didn't. That's that question we don't know. And you might have heard last night in news, they're very concerned with booby traps and explosives. So if this thing was full of explosives and it hit anywhere close to a populated area, even if it's a small populated area,
Mm.
it could have been really catastrophic beyond the fact you have 2,000 pounds of whatever,
Yeah.
hitting, anywhere near a populated region. Well, you don't know what materials on it. I mean, it could be toxic, different type of toxic material. You just don't know. So, I get, people are criticizing it should have been resolved sooner, but you got a combination of issues. You want to know what's in it. You don't want to hurt anybody while doing it.
Right.
And you want to explore options of how to get it safely, or alternative options to try to preserve the payload. So you have a maximum ability to determine what's going on inside of it.
Yeah. Just another one for the books.
Things I've never seen. I mean, the last time, and you can look at the history books, I've heard of any time of weaponization balloons in the modern era, meaning 20th century. I mean, during World War II, Japanese created balloon bombs. So you may not you're aware of it clearly, but not everybody is. About them attaching explosive devices to balloons, releasing them to the air currents, and just see what happens.
Right. Yeah, it was very indiscriminate, and like you say, cheap as well.
Yeah, it was a cheap way, and many of them didn't even work properly.
That's right. Yep. Hey, what's going on at the State House, by the way? We should talk about that, I guess.
Yeah, it's a little bit quiet right now. The Senate's going to engage in debate of the joint rules. The joint rules operate the joint committees in the rules of the two branches on how they're going to operate and interact with each other. Senate's going to debate that on Thursday, tomorrow. And they actually did one little change as the joint committees. They didn't change the name of the Veterans Committee for some reason. that the House did in joint committee. So they created one little discrepancy. Other rules changes is very similar to what they've done in the past regarding of how they want to engage in joint committee votes, how disclose those will go, and how to disclose public documents, which I don't understand because if you do a public hearing, you're kind of in the public, so it's not like you can hide anything where you're hurting the public. And now with a virtual world of a hybrid style system, using the internet, as most of you may be aware, I use Facebook for my hearings. Last cycle, we have to move to Microsoft Teams in the state website this cycle, which was having some technology challenges, as everybody has technology challenges. If you say something or you present documents to the committee, I mean, it's a public document, people. I mean, you're in a public hearing. This isn't brain surgery. So they have some like stuff in the Senate proposal. I'm kind of like, but it's already public. So why you?
It's redundant. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like redundant stuff. I'm like scratching my head about it, but whatever makes them happy. The House and Senate would have to resolve the joint rules. Otherwise, you operate on these weird temporary rules once the committees are formed. So committee assignments can occur by any of the political parties or either branch until we settle what the joint committees look like. I mean, the speaker could put out House committee assignments on standing committees, but that seems kind of silly. You got to do it during 1 week.
Right. Yeah. Get it all done at once. Yeah. So, okay. So we'll wait and see what.
Yeah, no, as I say, Valentine's Day kiss. We may be missing that kiss on committee assignments for a little bit longer.
I saw was there a protest at the State House yesterday? Some students protesting climate change.
There's always a protest at the State House.
Yeah.
I mean, as we come to more normality at the State House, protests outside the State House is nearly a daily event. Sometimes with a demonstration or statement. Sometimes there's like 5 people, sometimes there's 50, sometimes there's hundreds. It does vary. Sometimes the media catches it, sometimes the media does not.
Okay.
It is a regular part of our lives, actually, to have people making statements over a lot of things. So I'm sure there was one. No idea what they were doing there.
Yeah. Okay.
And
that's true. It's the seat of government, right? So that's where people go. Yeah.
Yeah. They even protest issues that aren't our issues. I mean, they'll protest local issues as well as federal issues.
Yeah.
Because it's the location.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they want to do it in a place that is the seat of power or the appearance of seat of power, depending how you want to frame it. Especially in the federal stuff, we have nothing to say. But it's good optics, right? Most people don't know the difference. I still get emails about federal issues, federal constituent services that I have nothing to do with, and I have to find them from one of the federal delegation members to find, make the connection between the two people so that they can talk. But I mean, it's a backdrop, right? It's a great backdrop for Facebook, social media. It's a big backdrop for the news media if any news media shows up. So it's not surprising. I'm cool with it. I mean, it's just how it is.
Yeah. One federal issue that might impact the state is their feds are trying to determine if the state refunds are going to be federally taxed.
Yeah, it's a weird one because generally you don't. This is Charlie Baker kind of making a weird problem. The 62F issue, right, is the question mark. The 62F issue has always been a tax credit, which means that on your next tax bill coming, this tax cycle, you're paying your 2022 taxes. You generally take your taxes and whatever you pay, you apply the credits minus your tax payment amount, and then it can result in refunds because credits equal cash. That's how I like to put it. And if it comes back as a state refund and you're not itemized, meaning you're not a Schedule A, you don't get this like 1080, 1099G or something like that. I can't remember the exact one. I'm sure an accountant can tell you what it is off the top of their head. But you get a form from the state saying that your refund is taxable because you itemize your deductions. Well, Charlie Baker gave everyone a check as opposed to being a part of a tax credit, claiming it's a credit without actually us filling a tax credit form against the 2022 tax burden.
Yeah.
So on our level, obviously we can exempt that from taxes. On the federal level, they're trying to figure out this is actually income.
Yep.
And this is the quandary that Charlie Baker made. And it's great we're not the governor anymore. You handed out a bunch of checks and now you're gone. It's not your problem. This is kind of one of those things that the legislature was kind of miffed about. And we watched the revenue consensus hearings that were going out to the Department of Revenue Commissioner regarding the implementation of 62F. Not the fact that people shouldn't get their 62F credits, but how they got it to you has ramifications.
Yeah.
And this is the one I don't have an answer for you either, because
No.
it wasn't a credit, because it didn't come as part of a tax refund. It was a straight up check. And there's no federal just how to deal with it. I mean, I know that California issued stimulus checks again,
Yep.
but because, they're issued by state of California, that's income. The
Yep.
IRS wants their share of that.
Yeah, and might work out to be the same thing here, although, the refunds were based on the amount of taxes you paid. So I don't know. It's going to be curious to see what happens.
I don't know. If you're a Schedule A tax filer, you may be, you have itemized deductions, you may be looking at a tax on that. I just don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
It's such a new thing. It's such a rare thing. The IRS has got to sort out what that may be.
And they need to do it pretty quickly.
They actually need to do it pretty quickly, because tax day is coming up. Otherwise, they'll have to make you file amended tax returns.
Right, exactly. And nobody wants to do that. Nobody wants to file them to begin with. Never mind
Yeah.
amending them.
And I don't have complicated tax structure, so I'm a TurboTax kind of guy. And if you got tax software, it needs to continuously update with the
Yes.
latest version of the tax code and tax forms. So, obviously, I think probably, again, I'm not telling you what to do, but you want to wait a little longer. Not like I don't believe you should file right the day of. I mean, personally speaking, but
Right.
maybe look into March, maybe.
Yep.
Yeah, and see what it is. I like to normally get my stuff done in February, honestly, that's what I like to do, because I have state ethics reports I have to do in May.
Mhm.
So the sooner I take care of my taxes, the easier it is to fill out my ethics forms, because they tend to match up almost identically. And then, odd stuff like, do you have mortgage? I don't have a home mortgage, but I mean, do you have
Yeah.
student loans? You have to check off the boxes, right? But in terms of the financial part, it's a lot easier when I do my taxes and kind of match it against ethics forms. But I mean, I just don't know, because if you're not doing an accountant and doing tax software, it's got to update once the feds make a decision.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So, all right, put that on hold and see what happens.
Yeah, we'll wait and see.
Yeah.
Check with the federal delegation at some point. Maybe we can get them into a Zoom.
I already have a call out to Congressman Lynch, believe it or not. Hey, speaking of credits, did you see this proposal to provide tax credit to people who subscribe to local newspapers?
What?
Yeah, yes. There's a bill by one of your House members, I believe, to offer a $250 tax credit to people who commit to subscribing to local newspapers for a certain amount of time.
How do you determine that you did it for a certain amount of time?
All kinds of questions about that. Yeah.
Well, again, we're a free petition state, folks. You can file anything. It's why we have like 4,500, I think, or so bills filed this cycle in January. So this is another example of the free petition state that we live in, as opposed to other states, many states that limit total petitions that can be filed by legislators, and the public has zero ability to input on the filing. It is not that kind of state. So well, no idea what that's about, but I understand the public policy behind it, to encourage, preserving the local media.
Yes, that's the gist. Yeah.
I get it. It's interesting because most people realize the local media isn't taxed. First Amendment right. You can't tax each newspaper. You can't put a sales tax on it.
Oh, sales tax, right? Yeah.
You tax the corporation, but they can't put a sales tax on each newspaper.
Right. No, the price on the publication is the price you pay.
Yeah. Which is actually most people don't realize, changing topics as I just pivoted out of that question. But yeah, no, interesting little piece of trivia. Most people realize the First Amendment right protects individual newspapers you buy from taxation. The corporation can be taxed, obviously, but
Yep.
the newspaper itself can't, which there are plenty of court cases on. So, but no, I get it. I mean, advertising reduction, people are very aware the physical paper has very much reduced advertising. And that's the lifeblood of the media. And it's not just this media, but, Facebook, Google, all live on advertising dollars.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's an interesting question. Actually, I think about it a little more. Does the tax credit interfere with a First Amendment right of free speech? Because now you're trying to direct people.
Incentivizing people, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it's now that I just thought about giving it half a thought. It's like it creates another interesting question I don't have a legal answer for, because if I give you a tax credit, basically the government pays for your newspaper, or we
That's
interfere
right.
with the First Amendment by limiting you to subscribe versus one news source that is a paid subscription versus like online, excuse me, online media that relies on, let's say, donations or whatnot, or alternative advertising that doesn't require a subscription. So, if I use a news source online, I would be disincentivized from using that free news source versus a source that the government will pay you for, and then thereby interfere with the First Amendment right of an individual to choose
That's
payment.
right. Yeah. Yeah.
Again, this is just legal. We know tacky giving half a thought on the fly here. Um, that has
It's,
no
it
answer.
is, it is interesting. And if you do it for one, do you have to do it for all, It's so,
Yeah, like I said, it's just a question. I don't have an answer for.
yeah.
I just gave it half a thought just now, and I'm like, huh. So yeah, this is how I think, folks. I can do things like this.
Oh, we're watching the process in action. Okay.
Watching the process in action, just giving it half a thought. I'm like, huh, it creates some interesting other questions I don't have answers for.
Yeah. So, well, it does shine the spotlight on, the fact that local newspapers, local journalism in general is fading quickly.
Yeah, but also creates an interesting question too, because for example, you have your podcast in the morning, you give us 9 minutes or so news. QATV is paid for via the cable service company as part of agreement between the city and the cable company, which, whenever it renews, there's new contractual agreement between the cable company and the community access television. You don't do paid advertising because you're a not-for-profit, and the nature of your funding pretty much says no, you can't make your own money on the side.
Right.
And if we'll be trying to drive people away from listening to your podcast versus subscribing to a newspaper. And I'm aware that things like The Economist and New York Times have their own podcasts, but they don't do local news. It's kind of specialized podcasts. Reuters, NPR have their own podcasts. Again, I mean, they're not like general news in many ways, although NPR did have more of like twice a daily update, whatever podcast. And this actually creates a whole lot of question marks in my head. It's pretty intriguing because this medium we're in now is actually can be considered a informational medium, which makes it news.
That's true. Yeah, that actually goes to the definition of news, right? Exactly. Yeah, lots of questions.
Yeah, it includes any type of interview. I mean, anyone you interview is news.
That's correct.
Doesn't matter who it is.
That's right. It becomes a public piece of information at that point. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's you gave me something.
Head scratching, Tacky.
Yeah, you gave me something to think about for the last 4 minutes of how I.
Maybe we can continue that discussion.
Yeah, now you guys know how my mind works in a 4-minute span.
So next week it'll be what? Valentine's Day.
It is Valentine's Day, so I wish everyone a happy Valentine's Day. If you're into that sort of thing, I'm not into that sort of thing. But it's again returning to some normality, and I'm aware that people still have some pennies together, and of all types of consumer going on, it's really restaurants and going out to venues has been the major economic spend of many consumers right now, and expect and hope that Valentine's Day is a very good day for restaurants and other entertainment venues for over the next week or so for people to go with your loved ones and enjoy an evening together. And if you're single, maybe you're somebody else's babysitter is what's going to happen.
Well, it all helps.
It all helps. I'm in that category of single, but thankfully my nephew's in college. I don't have to do babysitting.
Oh, there you go.
So I don't have to do that.
Someday he may be babysitting you.
Well, that is a distinct possibility, actually. I thought about that before too.
Yes. So be nice to your nieces and nephews as the moral of the story.
Yeah, there's a few jokes we can revolve around that one as we get a little older as well. And I do age, contrary to popular belief, I do indeed age. But it's that's kind of what consumer spending is right now. Retail spending is very modest. Q4 was not great. December in general for retailers. But I mean, service industry and the restaurant industry is doing okay. And, I hope that people continue able to, enjoy, enjoy getting out, enjoying the services they get.
Yeah. All right. Time to tell folks how to get a hold of you, Jackie.
Sure, 617-722-2370, 617-722-2370 is the landline to the office. There is someone there. I know it's an automated system. We deal with a person in the front desk, we answer the phone, but when it gets busy, it goes to automated system. That's just how it works, folks. If you're got like 6 calls coming at once, you can't answer the phone together 6 times. And just hit a button, you get to somebody, leave a message, and we'll work to get back to you. You obviously can email at tackey.chan@mahouse.gov, tackey.chan@mahouse.gov. You're welcome to do that. And we'll see if we get back to you quickly. Obviously, you got constituent problems, definitely call the office. It's actually easier in a conversation than trying to read through your email, because it's the back and forth is not always expedient. They also have Tackey Chan Facebook, Tackey Chan State Representative Tackey Chan Facebook. You guys all know the drill at this point on that. And @Tackey Chan is my Twitter. The state website is malegislature.gov. You can find the 4,000 plus bills now online as they're waiting for referral to committee, their House dockets and Senate dockets. But once they get to committee, get a House bill, Senate bill. So, wait 6 weeks for those bills to come up. I think that's how long it's to take the clerks to do the referrals. And you need joint committees to do referrals. So kind of get those committees formed. And then, you have tackeychan.org. Staff and I continue to discuss about making their website better. And there'll be little tweaks that you're going to be noticing as we move into the year, because we have to update the information based on the 2023 and 2024 legislative session. So we got to tweak that a bit here and there. So plenty of mediums for information, plenty of ways to get to me. But the best way continues to be, call the office directly, or send an email directly to me, and we'll see what we can do to get back to you.
Okay. Appreciate it, Tackey. Tune in next week and watch more of Tackey Thinking.
Well, I'm sure you'll bring up a new topic next week, and we can brainstorm that in 5 minutes or less. You can start a time.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Tackey.
Take care, Joe.